Hi everybody, this is Sam. Today is Saturday, June 8th, and today I'm going to have this vlog be about what to expect when you're going into a psychiatric hospital, or a psych unit. Because I have had, let's see, my first hospitalization, two, three, four. I've had 5 hospitalizations, I believe. So I will go over those and talk about sort of what my experience was in the hospital and what people might expect. So, my stereotyped judgments or thoughts about a psychiatric hospital when I hear of it before I was ever hospitalized was, people fighting, violent all the time, nurses being really strict and terrible, and just, I don't know, just people locked in a room with nothing, and just horrible thoughts on it. That's what I thought of when I thought of a psychiatric hospital. So how I was first hospitalized was in November of 2013, as people who know my story, that basically I became extremely suicidal. I think it was built up unconsciously for months and months, and then I had a seizure from Wellbutrin and Zoloft interacting. It is true that Wellbutrin causes seizures. I should have been on an anti-seizure med while I was taking that. But anyways, so I tried to harm myself by breaking glass. The nurse at my residential facility realized that, heard the glass break, and then I was basically done and had to go into the hospital. So at that point, I wasn't really afraid of violent people or being locked up. I was just done with life, so I was like, whatever, they can do whatever, I don't care. But they were very nice. So what happened was this woman from the unit came down into the emergency room and interviewed me and talked to me about my issues and what was going on, and she said yes, I was good for admitting. First of all, because I was coming from a facility, what the nurses did was call the psychiatrist that comes to the facility, and so they had called that psychiatrist, and so that psychiatrist knew that I was going into the hospital, and I think they'd even made sure there was a bed for me. So that's what happens. See, all of my experiences are coming from living in a facility where there is some way of getting someone into the hospital where it's already determined that there is a bed. If the person needs to be hospitalized, they can be hospitalized, and you're brought in by ambulance, and sometimes you're directly admitted into the hospital. Into the psych unit. You're not even in the ER. So my experiences are kind of weird and out of the norm because I'm not someone just going to the ER and in crisis and sitting in the ER, which I know is a huge issue. So I'd like to hear about anyone's experiences of not coming from a facility and just coming, from your house to the hospital, and how that whole admission process works. And I know it's different for every state. In Illinois, different psychiatrists have different admitting privileges. So they admit to different hospitals, and they can't admit to a hospital they don't have admitting privileges to. In Massachusetts, I'm learning that the psychiatrists don't have a specific hospital they admit to. You are just sent to wherever there's a bed. And so you go to whatever ER, and you're usually transferred to a different hospital, is what my understanding is. And I want to learn more about that as I plan to go back to Mass. So anyway, so we'll just skip the admissions part. But basically to say, for my first hospitalization, they interviewed me and, realized that I was very suicidal. She said, we have to get your depression under control and your meds and everything else. So I was taken from the ER by a wheelchair by the security guards up to the hospital psychiatric unit, and you're taken by wheelchair. I imagine that's similar for all hospitals, you're taken around by the wheelchair. So got up there and got you're in a hospital gown anyways once you're in the ER. Oh, wait a minute. Sorry. It depends. Like, I forget if I was in my clothes when I came up on that first hospitalization. But usually you're already in a hospital gown because they do a medical clearance. So you're in a hospital gown, they weigh you, they do blood draw. They didn't do any of that in my first hospitalization, but they have on my other hospitalizations done those things to like check you out medically, and then you have to wait for to however long to go up to the unit. So anyways, on the unit, you meet there are like 3 or 4 nurses, and then there are like 3 or 4 psychiatric tech type people. They call them the counselors, but they're just like, psych tech counselor type people there. So you meet everybody, as you do, and they get you, they search your body, which I know some people can find really invasive, but I understand it's just for safety. They search your body, they search your stuff. For me, I was allowed to bring my technology assistive devices with me, so my braille note to write with, my computer. I was even allowed my iPod that first psych admission. I think because I was coming from a place for the blind, they'd hospitalized a lot of people from Friedman Place on that unit, so they knew what the deal is with the blind. So I had no problem with my assistive devices coming into the hospital with me. And actually, my laptop kind of saved my life because I was able, without my laptop, I wouldn't have been able to do email, I wouldn't have been able to reach out to the different facilities that I was talking to about trying to get me into a facility because of the level of discrimination I faced due to facilities saying, no, we can't take you because you're blind. So with that, my assistive devices were in that unit. In the other units, in my second hospitalization, I'm trying to think. Yeah, my second hospitalization, I don't think I brought anything with me. No, I didn't, because they said, I forget why. I think it came up so suddenly. It was another case of me self-harming a lot, and the psychiatrist I had at the time, I swear, loves to hospitalize, so he hospitalized me, and it was just very quick, and I don't think I had time to pack. My third hospitalization, I think I brought my laptop with me, and that worked out fine. My fourth hospitalization, I was in, one of the hospitalizations, they said no, that it was like a privilege to have it, and because I was self-harming and I was on 1-to-1, I couldn't have my stuff, and it was locked up. One of my hospitalizations, my fourth and fifth hospitalizations were at Thorac with this really weird, bad psychiatrist who was always keeping me on 1-to-1, as if that was the solution to everything. And I was there for like 2 weeks, and then I came back and was there for like a week, like a day later. It was really screwy, and I can tell that story in another video. But just in terms of my assisted devices, like I said, that has been what I have requested, and I've asked like different psychiatrists. I'm gonna ask like Dr. Cleary, just to double check and be like, hey, if I was in the hospital, could I bring my braille note? Which is the one thing I can bring, because it's how I read and write in braille. So I can read, I can write, whatever for groups, and I have things to read on there. So that's why I wanted to go over my assisted devices. I'd love to hear from people who are blind or otherwise disabled about bringing in their assisted devices to a psychiatric hospital or your regular hospital, but definitely the psychiatric hospital. So that's just that in terms of the assisted devices. But okay, so the hospital, what they offer depends on the unit. So like my first hospitalization in St. Joe's was really good. They had a lot of groups. They had like goals group, they had depression management group, they had coping skills. Every afternoon they'd have a group called problem solving, where you would talk about, it was basically a process group about, why you're in the hospital, what's going on, what progress are you making, and things like that. They had an art group. I made a bracelet. And so they had those types of groups. They had groups every day, like most of the day. So that was a very good hospital. They had a very good structure and routine and things like that going on. So that was good. But then at St. Mary's, where I went for my next 2 hospitalizations and my last hospitalization, so the last hospitalization being in New Year's 2017, I was at St. Mary's. They were terrible. They hardly had any groups because they never knew when the doctor was going to come in. So they basically had nothing. I think there was one group I went to and they had like art, and I had like a piece of clay I could play with. And that was about it. Thorac, where I went for 2 hospitalizations, the 2 hospitalizations in a row, they didn't have very many groups. I think they had like 1 check-in group a day, maybe. Because again, they supposedly didn't know when the psychiatrist was coming. And so for those hospitalizations, so you would go to groups, let's say the first hospitalization that was really good. You would go to groups, and then anytime you weren't in groups, you could be either in the day room or in your room sleeping. In the day room, they had like TV, coloring books, paper to read, or books for people to read, and just basically sit and watch the TV. And they would have stuff on TV that was so triggering, like Law and Order and Criminal Minds. It's like, why are you putting this on in the psych unit? Like, this is the worst place to put on, like, Criminal Minds, Law and Order, like, really. So that just made me laugh, and I was just like, seriously? And so I wouldn't sit in the day room because I'm not going to listen to those shows. That's going to be scary for me. So I would just lay in bed. I would sleep a lot. And then seeing the psychiatrist would be every day. You would see the psychiatrist. Although some of the days at St. Mary's, I didn't see the psychiatrist. And when I saw the psychiatrist, it was literally for like a couple sentences when he was like, so, why are you here? I'm like, I have no idea. He's like, oh, okay. We need to keep you for another 2 days. It was just so weird. So, the schedule was like groups, and then, you could hang out. And then you would see your psychiatrist. That's basically like the rundown of the day. And you would have your meals, and each day you would make your menu for the next day and pick what your meals were. The food was really good at all the hospitals. Like, that's actually, it was pretty good. So yeah, I mean, that's sort of what to expect. In terms of the patients, it's different, depending on who's there. Like, it could be really mellow people. It could be people that are really agitated and stuff. But the staff is there. They do know how to keep someone, away from other people if they're going to be violent. Like, there was a couple people that were in the quiet room a lot at one of my hospitalizations, or the one that I went to twice in a row. They were in the quiet room a lot because they were screaming, hitting, and whatever. I actually also was in the quiet room, and I'll talk about that in another video. But, so anyways, so it just depends, but the staff are there to help, and they're not the ones, they weren't abusive or mean or anything, at all in the hospital. So that was like something that I really got proven wrong and let go of that judgment of them being abusive or mean or anything. They were misguided on certain issues, like that the self-harm, that the safety contracts and all that don't work for everybody. And for me, it just made it more of a power struggle, which is why we ended up treating my self-harm very differently, which I can also do a video about. Yeah. That's basically my experience in the hospital. If people want to know more, feel free to put in the comments your thoughts and questions. And in terms of what to bring, like I said, it depends. At this one unit, the one that I was there 2 hospitalizations in a row, they didn't allow anything of yours. They would lock everything in a cupboard, including like stuffed animals, and it was just so ridiculous because they didn't have anything of mine. And like, I need stuff in my hands, like as you see on my videos, if you can see my hands. I don't point the camera right, so sorry. Yeah. So I always have something in my hands, like my rocks or stuffed animals or something. And to not have that, like, drove me crazy because I need that stimulation. And so when I didn't have that, I got very agitated, and that's how I ended up in the quiet room. That hospital, they did also they switched my charger with the charger from some other resident that had a speech device thing, an AAC device. So they switched the charger, and then instead of just calling the family member, they waited and said they were sending in for a new charger or something, but they really weren't. And so, finally the sister brought back my charger, but I had to wait like a week, and I had to be totally, I was in the quiet room 3 times because I was just so agitated. But yeah, in terms of what to bring, like I said, I don't know if it's different for if you're coming from home. I mean, at St. Joe's, I know the first hospitalization, they do have you can be in your regular clothes. So I brought clothes and pajamas without drawstrings, obviously. They provide toothbrush, toothpaste, all your soap and everything. I brought my assisted devices. I brought my stuffed animals, things like that. But I would love to hear other people's thoughts on what they brought and if it was locked up or what, and especially if you're disabled, what went on. Because I'd like to know that. So, and also, if you are from Massachusetts and you want to put a comment and be hey, just so you know, this is what's going to happen, fair warning, about differences you hear from, my experience in Illinois to Mass. I would love that, an ability to connect with people that have gone through similar things so that I can know what to expect and my friend can know what to expect, because we are going to go together and live probably at my parents' house for a while, and then maybe live on our own. So we'd like to know what to expect. So that's about it. Yeah, if people have any questions, please let me know, and I'd love to start discussion on this because it's something I'm really passionate about, people getting good care. And I will say that first hospitalization, that first hospital was a very good hospital and provided good care. And so, yeah. Unfortunately, those other hospitals are just you're just sitting there for days and you just sleep and stare at the ceiling, and I don't think that's very therapeutic. But I don't know. So anyways, I'll talk to you guys later. It's been a super long video, but hopefully you'll get something out of it. Alright, bye.
16, my web. No, web, web, stop.